Okay, so I was just overdoing some sight reading on my sight reading channel, and after reading several hymns, I was reading this accompaniment, and this accompaniment was objectively much easier than the hymns, but I was just cratering all over it for whatever reason, and it kind of made me want to talk about this issue that people have. I see this a lot, and it's a thing. It's a problem that I ran into, and I'm glad that I solved it mostly. Now, the thing is, I could have looked at this accompaniment and gone, "Oh, this one's too easy. I should just sight read the next one. There's no point in reading this." And I think that's a problem that people run into. They frequently think something's too easy, especially with sight reading. They think something's too easy. It's below them. And to that, I would say, prove it. Put your fingers on the keys and prove it. If it's so easy, you should be able to play it absolutely effortlessly. It should be super musical. There should be no problems. You shouldn't be struggling to read it at all. If there's nothing to be gained, then do that. And at worst, you've wasted a minute or two playing beautiful music. But in reality, most people are going to run into some problems, and they're going to find things they need to address. And I think that's what people don't want to do. That would be a huge hit to their ego, to play something and then realize they're not as good as they think they are. People tend to measure their musicianship, the level that they think they're at, by the hardest piece of music that they can play. And I think that's super inaccurate. I usually make the argument that you're as good as the hardest piece of music you can play and prepare in a week. That's a much better measure of where you're at, because if it took you 6 months to play some really hard piece, are you as good as a person who could prepare that piece in a week? Absolutely not. But I think most people just don't want to admit it to themselves because, yeah, it sucks when you make mistakes on things that are really easy. But that's honestly where you would get a lot more growth. If you're playing one piece of music and you're spending months on it or even weeks on it, you're covering such a small cross-section of musical skills. You're only addressing just very few things. But you'd get a lot better if you would play more things. And especially with sight reading, you need to sight read as many styles and things as you can. This is super personal to me because even in my career, when I was making a living playing, my sight reading was terrible. Because I was doing stuff that didn't require sight reading. I was playing in a band. It was mostly comping. And so I could get away with my sight reading being poor, but I was getting pulled into more and more gigs that required better reading, and I was falling on my face. And then I wasted so much time essentially following the advice that's just sort of out there in the ether, and it frustrates me. I saw this on a Reddit thread very recently, and I wanted to chime in, but I didn't have the energy. Because people ask for sight reading advice, and what do they get told? They get told, read hymns and read Bach conventions. And that is just stupid. It's honestly just ridiculous. For somebody who is a beginner, who is struggling, that is not a good place. Those things are way too difficult. Hymns are difficult to sight read. My sight reading's gotten better at hymns. They're easy to me now, but they are objectively not a good thing to practice your sight reading on. And also, even if you got good at reading hymns and Bach conventions, which once again, stupid, way too difficult, that's not going to make you better at reading tons of other things. That'll make you good at reading hymns and Bach conventions. It's not going to make you good at reading things with syncopated rhythms or thicker harmonies or big rolling arpeggios. You're just going to fall apart because you haven't addressed any of those things. So you need to for sight reading, you need to read as many styles as possible. But more importantly, you have to start really, really simple. You have to address those real simple things. And I wasted so much time because I was telling myself, I can play these hard things. I have performed this really hard music. Why can't I just sight read hymns? That should be the starting place. Or why can't I just sight read whatever? I was trying to read things that were well beyond me, because no, I don't want to sit down with even an Alfred adult book and try to sight read. I definitely don't want to sit down with some Sham beginner book and try to sight read baby tunes. But ultimately, that's kind of where I needed to be. A person who's literally got a music degree, who's been gigging on trumpet for years, who is making a living playing piano, taking money, playing gigs, but then I have to like humble myself and play these really simple things, because that is where my sight reading actually was when I was really honest with myself. And by addressing that, that's when I started making progress. But people are so unwilling to do that. And I think the problem is exacerbated by the fact that you see other people who are good at sight reading. I can go watch Josh Wright trying to sponsor some sight reading program or whatever, and he's sitting there sight reading, and he's sight reading really, really well. And you're like, man, I want to be like that. Well, you don't get like that by doing what he's doing, by sight reading the stuff he's doing. He has years, probably decades of experience on you reading, and he started at the beginning. And I think this is especially a problem for people who are starting later. If you're starting in your teens or into your adulthood, suddenly you have that awareness of, I don't want to suck. The thing that somebody like Josh, I don't know his details, but I'm sure he started when he was like 5 or around there, and that's where most pianists start. The thing is, developmentally, we don't develop a sense of abstract thinking until, early tweens. And younger people don't have that sort of, they're not as self-conscious. So that's fine. Like if you're 5 and you're reading baby tunes, you don't care. You're happy with like, oh, this is cool, and I'm doing a thing, and I'm playing this cool song, and you're sight reading without even realizing you're sight reading, and you're practicing, and it's fun. But as you get older, you're suddenly super aware of how bad you are. You're aware of how your peers compare to you, or how they might think of you, and you don't want to be represented that way, or you don't want to be represented that way to yourself. And so you're just unwilling to go through those baby steps. And the thing that sucks, and once again, like I said, exacerbates this, is that you often get advice from people who took lessons since they were 5. And those people take for granted all of that skill that they built up before they were even able to realize what they were doing. A lot of times people make the mistake of saying, oh, English is easy. Okay, if you are a native English speaker, it's easy. But if you actually look at it objectively, it is a very difficult language that is full of all kinds of inconsistencies. And it would be ridiculous of you to just tell somebody who is trying to learn English as a second language, oh, well, just, whatever. Just start reading books, just start reading newspapers, Here, read some Dickens novels. That's not how you're going to learn language. You're going to learn it by you've got to learn the basic syntax, and you've got to learn real simple words and put together really simple sentences and slowly build on that constantly and build up your vocabulary. Over years, it takes time to develop those skills. And you just have to be willing to accept that and stop lying to yourself. So be careful about taking advice from people who maybe don't have that window. They started when they were very young, and they don't have that window. They don't remember. It's so far in their rear view before that age of abstract thinking that they can't remember how they developed those skills. Like, can you remember how you learned to walk? You take that for granted every day, but it's actually a really complicated system of, moving different muscles and keeping your balance. There's all kinds of things that go into that. So be careful about that advice. Just be willing to start very simple. You need to start simpler than you think you need to start on everything. And you should spend a lot more of your time covering a lot more material, not less, not just a handful of very simple things. So I'm glad that, I read this tune, and I was completely humbled by the fact that I botched it. So I also found an audio issue that I had accidentally created in OBS from another meeting I had. That's neither here nor there. Hopefully somebody finds this useful and goes and practices something more appropriate to their level. And for now, I'm going to get back to sight reading.